seeing a horse understand something, seeing a horse recognize that we're having a conversation. Like it doesn't have to be this big thing. And I notice I get more joy out of those moments than I do prepping for the next competition.
Hi everyone, I'm Caroline Culbertson and this is Equestrian Voices. Today on the podcast, we're having a little chat about partnering with a new horse and evaluating your goals as a rider. We're going to talk about keeping an eye on your ego and how it's impacting your decisions, and also really finding joy in what you are doing as a rider. So many of you enjoyed my first chat with Chelsea Canedy that we decided to get together again and do another episode together. Chelsea Canedy is an Equestrian Masterclass instructor and is also my trainer and friend, and she recently went through the process of selling her longtime horse Albert, who she was very attached to and very bonded with, and purchasing a new mare, Lila, who is at a very different level of experience and has a completely different disposition than her former horse. So this is a bit of a different feel, I suppose, than the other Equestrian Voices episodes. It's a bit more of a tack room chat. It actually literally was a tack room chat with wine and sushi, which was pretty enjoyable on my part. But we wanted to share a little bit of the inside process here. So many riders have or do struggle with thoughts of whether or not their current horse is right for them and is the right match for their goals. And some of this podcast is dedicated to talking about, the process of integrating a new horse into your life, but it's also really about taking a look at your own goals and being real with yourself about what you want to do, even if it looks different than what everyone else around you is doing. Chelsea describes her own process of starting to listen to the ick that she was feeling in certain scenarios and how that informed her decisions and her goals with her new horse. We also talk about the emotions that are wrapped up in purchasing a new horse, from those complicated feelings of selling a former partner, which can sometimes feel a bit like grief or even like you've betrayed your horse, to the excitement and expectation that comes along with a new partner. And for Chelsea, even as a professional rider, all of those feelings and more existed. And so she talks about that experience for her. So I hope this episode leaves you feeling a little more in tune with what brings you joy in your riding, even if that is different than everyone else around you. Let's get started. So you have a new horse.
I do.
And I remember when you told me that you were getting a new horse. I knew when you were planning to get a new horse.
I had been thinking about it for a long time before it actually happened.
Okay, so let's start there. That's a really tough realization. For people, it feels like a betrayal. It feels like a divorce, I've heard people say. What brought you to the realization that you needed to find a new partner for yourself, and that would also necessitate moving on from Albert, who was your former big horse?
Yeah. For me, it was a question of what were my goals and did they align with what Albert wanted to do and could do? So for me, I really didn't want to be making him do something that I knew he would do because I asked him, but he didn't enjoy. And then at the same time, I wanted to do the thing that he didn't really enjoy, but would do because I asked. Just trying to move up a little in the eventing world, just
the
doing
more competitive stuff.
Yeah, and not even big stuff. He was running novice, and I was like, I'd like to have a horse that will go training.
Right.
And, he just wasn't happy doing the job. And I went in circles around it because he's also a very nice dressage horse in the eventing world. He did quite well and has the capability of doing more as a dressage horse. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you know what? I could just take that path. Mm-hmm. Or I was like, I could explore the working equitation world. I think that's really interesting. And I wonder if that would be a direction he and I could go together. But I just kept coming back to I still have things I want to do in the eventing world that would necessitate taking him along with me, or changing partners, or letting those things go and doing what Albert is capable of. And I don't think any of those are actually wrong answers. Mm-hmm. They're just a choice to make.
It's a choice to make. And I think it probably feels like a different choice when you are doing this for your livelihood versus an amateur.
Yeah. I mean, I thought about that a lot. I don't make my living mostly on having event riders as clients, honestly, which is really interesting to me because that's always been who I've identified myself as, like an event rider, right? I actually don't really make my living on a bunch. I have a few event riding clients that I would take to horse shows and we have a great time together. But like, that's not the majority of my livelihood. But it's something I am not ready to let go as a human. Like, I just really enjoy that world still. Yeah. So I didn't think to myself, like, well, if I don't do that, I won't be able to make a living. Like, I won't be able to show myself as a professional if I don't move along. For me, it was like more of like a personal feeling of like, am I ready to let go of this sport for me to stay with this horse?
Because you're not somebody that has a string of like 8 horses.
No.
And you're like, okay, you want to only do dressage? That's fine because I have these other 6 eventers.
And I don't ever want that, actually. And that's been a really interesting realization too. Like, in that process of deciding that I wanted to find myself a different partner, I also recognized that like, I have no desire to take a string of client horses out to events. I did that. It was not enjoyable to me. At the time, it was fine. It's what I thought I had to do to be relevant. And I have recognized, especially, it's really interesting, like over the last year to 2 years, that it is like, I have like a visceral reaction to that idea. Like, I do not want to do that.
Let's break that down because there's a lot of facets to that. What is it, the being at the competition that is not enjoyable?
I enjoy being at the competition.
Is it the dealing with the people's emotions at the competition? Is it dealing with the horse's behavior at the competition?
It's feeling like I can't give enough time and attention to every horse, like the partnership, if I have 6 to do. I so much enjoy the relationship building and the understanding of a horse in a much more complete way than I feel like you can get if you are running 6 in a weekend. I just want to be able to take my time. Like, I don't want to run from jumping off this one in dressage to getting over to that one in show jump with somebody else has tacked it up and like it just hands it to me. Yeah. And I have no idea where it's at mentally or emotionally. Yeah. And I just have to get on and do the work and then run back to the next thing.
So funny because you're painting the picture of the dream of so many people.
I know. And it used to be my dream, but it also used to be what I thought you had to do. It was a dream because I saw it happening in front of me and I was like, I want to do that. Right. And I did it. I was like, that isn't really that fun. And then I was like, and then I wondered if there was another way, and that's, I mean, I've definitely been figuring that out over the last several years. It's like, is there another path? And that other path doesn't mean I have to let go of my love of the sport of eventing by any stretch, but it doesn't mean that I have to build my livelihood and identity as a horse professional around that one thing.
There's not a common template for doing it another way. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that you've really had to figure out week by week, year by year. Yeah. I remember when you were talking about your goals and how moving away from Albert and looking for a new horse was kind of like part of that, a little bit of like an exploration. Yeah. When you first spoke about it, you were like, but I'll never sell Albert. And I remember in the back of my head being like, I hope that's true, but like that's the spot that so many people are in. That's really hard.
Totally. And I'll just say, like, when you're talking about that, I remember talking to you about it and my goals, and like they've even changed since then. Like, I remember I talked to you very specifically about this idea that I wanted to show that you could move up through the levels of eventing with a different perspective and practice of horsemanship. And like, that's what I try to do every single day with every horse I work with, every human I work with. That's what I'm trying to be an example of and just do, walk the talk. But even since then, my goals have changed. And not that is not like an amazing goal that I am aware of pursuing. But I think for me, what I've actually been really trying to do in the last 6 to 8 months, especially, actually since getting Lila, this has been a really interesting thing about getting a horse that could do more than Albert, is that I started really paying attention to what brings me enjoyment, not just what like I said I'm going to do, so I have to do.
Or what you can do.
Right. That's a good way to put it too. Like, just because I can do this doesn't mean it's what I really, really like doing. Like, I've been trying, it's so cheesy, but like, what sparks joy? You know, like really actually noticing when I get lit up by something.
Yeah.
And I've been surprised.
I mean, that is self-awareness. Like that's a skill that I certainly am still working on, but like I certainly could not have cultivated it as like a young person. I totally wanted to just like emulate what I saw.
Yeah.
And it's why representation is important and diversity in sport is important, because when you see somebody else doing something, you think, oh, I can do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And that is great. And it's a great place to start. And it's a great place to get exposure into different ways of doing things and different goals and different structures and different philosophies. But there has to come a point where you kind of bring it back to yourself and like a little bit form your own philosophy a little bit and like your own, just your own way of doing it. And those little glimmers in your day, when you start to pay attention to them.
Yeah, it's weird.
First of all, it's a real negativity buster.
Yeah, it really is.
It really changes your mindset.
Yeah, I've been really, really surprised by the things that I didn't know were what actually bring me joy when it comes to horses. And because I've been so focused on a path that I thought was the one I needed to walk. When you have a horse that can't do that thing and you're striving to do that thing, then you're like, well, if I just got, and now I have a horse that is far more capable than Albert. And I'm like, turns out maybe I don't really want to do that. Mm-hmm. It's weird. Yeah. It's very strange.
When something is not available to you.
Yeah, it feels like a huge pull. And I have zero regrets.
Okay, so then along comes Lila.
She's done so much. She
emotionally less complicated.
Oh my God. Like that's literally the biggest thing. And for me, as a professional who helps people with complicated horses all the time, I just wanted something uncomplicated.
One of the things that I remember you talked about too is, can I still like hang my shingle basically on like being this professional that like deals with the way that horses think and what way horses learn and horse behavior. And I help people with complicated horses. Like that's really what I'm like very good at and very proficient at. But then I buy a well-schooled horse. Like what does that like delete my identity? Am I rewired?
Totally. I had a lot of anxiety about that. And like, even if I like move her up the levels and go do the things that I know she's capable of, can I say I did that? No, I didn't train her. I didn't make her that. But it turns out that like the things I really, really enjoy doing with Lila are the things that she's not already good at. Like I really enjoy seeing her understand things differently. Like she knows her job. She is a cross-country machine, which is so fun. All of the things that make it hard with an emotionally complicated horse don't exist with her. So like there are lots of things that are still hard. Like she's a different species and we're trying to communicate in a language that the two of us are both still learning.
Sure.
But there's so many parts of it that are just simpler because she's physically and emotionally capable of what I'm asking her to do.
Right.
Which is what I wanted. I wanted to not be fighting an uphill battle all the time.
What did selling Albert actually feel like?
I have this thing that I call My-horse-itis, that we treat our horse differently than any other horse. Yeah, it's so insidious, and it like kind of messes with good training. And honestly, it does. It just does. And as soon as I signed the paperwork and I was like, you are a horse in training now. Albert had to toe the line a little bit more than he had to before.
Yeah.
It was weird. I like instantly could be like, you're a horse in training and I have a job to do for the human that owns you.
Yeah.
And therefore I have to get X, Y, and Z done. And so suck it up, buttercup.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was really funny. Like I could see the places where I had a little more leeway with him because I was careful, because I was worried about him liking me. Like, I hate to say that, but it's true. That's why we have My-horse-itis, because we're worried about our horses not liking us. And so we don't push into those edges. So we don't want to offend them or upset them and have them like be sad.
Yeah.
Like with my teenage daughter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah. You're like, this boundary is going to forever ruin our relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
When really it actually is, it's the kind of thing that you can do.
Yeah,
and that leads us perfectly into talking about this project, and that is the New Horse Starter Pack. I think that people will find this to be a different approach than maybe even just what they have in mind or what they theoretically thought that the first 30 days or 45 days or however long it takes you to get through it would look like with a new horse. Because for starters, you basically say, leave him alone. Like, back off.
Stop touching it.
Stop touching the new horse. Sit in the field with it, watch it, admire it, observe, analyze, ponder. Not too much.
Yeah, don't get yourself all in a tizzy.
It's, I had Helena Stormans on the podcast. You know, she helps find a lot of partnerships. Yes. And so she sees a lot of new horses matched with new riders and what the result is of that and how those partnerships develop. And she just was like, I cannot emphasize this enough. It takes a very long time. So this starter pack is only a very initial impression. But the idea being it sets you off on the correct foot. I don't know if we want to say correct, but it sets you off on a good, solid foot, lays a foundation. It is very horse first.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it has to be.
Yeah.
Like, there's a time at which you will ask your horse to let it be rider first. You know, like, we're competing today. I am sorry that it's windy and you would prefer to be eating grass. Time to go to work. But that isn't the foundation I want to lay, because then when I ask that, it's not given freely.
Winderin is a brand that is working very hard to combine their expertise in engineering and design with their passion for horse and rider comfort. And comfort for our horses cannot be compromised on. I've really enjoyed my conversations with this brand and how forthright they are about the development and the testing of their products. The make of these products is incredibly high quality and durable, which is just really important when you're making an investment in your tack lineup. One of the products that I really like that seems to be becoming quite popular is the Knee Protect Stirrup. These stirrup irons are designed to absorb shock both from the top of the stirrup iron and the bottom. Another nice feature is you can change the angle of the footbed specifically to suit your own anatomy, and they've got this nice wide footbed that feels really sturdy. So these stirrups were tested by scientists at the University of Copenhagen, and they saw a 255% improvement in shock absorption when compared to the standard stirrup iron. Full transparency, my knees don't really give me all that much trouble on a daily basis while I ride. So from a really acute knee pain relief standpoint, I can't speak to that as much personally, but I've noticed that in reviews sprinkled over the internet and various forums, etc., talking to other riders that have tried these, riders did have a pretty widespread success in reducing knee pain with these stirrups. So I would recommend heading to the Winderin website and looking through their knowledge zone a bit to learn more about the testing and development process. But just from a basic stirrup iron standpoint, I really like these. The Atomic Topline saddle pad is also really nice. It's a bit of a sturdier type of feel of saddle pad compared to something more flimsy like a cotton baby pad. And I really like this so that I can ensure that it's up off the top of my horse's back under the saddle and won't slide down and create pressure while I ride. Also, okay, this pad is beautiful, and I know aesthetics are not top priority when we're talking about function, but man, it is nice when you love to look down at this beautiful product. It's just so well made and so beautiful. I have the anthracite and rose gold pad, and I love it. It also washes very well, which is really important for me. If you have questions, the customer service team at Winderin is awesome. They're super friendly, super responsive, and they are willing to help you navigate their products. So you can go to winderin.com, that's WINDEREN.com. And if you do check out any of their products, you can use the code VOICES, that's lowercase voices, at checkout and get 5% off of your purchase. Once again, that's winderin.com. Talk to me just about what your philosophy is with a new horse. So you've been through this yourself recently. You also have had many students get new horses. When a new horse comes into your barn and it belongs to a student, what are like some of those initial conversations that you have with students around like how to behave around your new horse? Also, how you're very observant and fastidious about how everyone that interacts with the horses, you know, your barn hands, the staff, everyone who's on your farm, you always have eyes on like, that horse is having a little bit of a hard time. Yeah, right. Do I need to go intervene? Does that person have the skills to deal with that? Totally. Like, even if it's just like leading in and out. Totally. I think that's like an important angle to having a new horse is it's not just the rider and student who's working on it.
Yeah. It's like an overall way that I want to make sure the horse is. Like I want them to be settled and attentive, like at all times. And I don't mean attentive like they only watch me and they never look away. I mean like they know I exist. Like so many times I watch people and their horses and like, it doesn't even seem like the horse knows that the person is attached to the end of the rope or there's a person sitting on their back. Like they're going through the motions and they know what they have to do, but they're not like engaged in what's happening. From the very beginning with a new horse, what I'm looking for is a level of engagement that would be equivalent to like a conversation I'm having with you. Not like I'm talking at you and you're going through the motions to be done and move on. We're actively listening to each other and we're creating a conversation in real time. I see no point in getting on a horse that I'm not involved in an actively listening conversation with. I like feel like maybe we'll get something done, but does it feel good to either of us? I mean, not to me. And so whenever we get a horse in that's new, either like I get one in for training or I have a client that gets a new horse, like we have conversations beforehand about how we're not going to rush. We're going to take our time. We're going to spend the first day or two just observing the horse in its new environment, like getting to know its idiosyncrasies, getting to know it, the way it relates to other horses and to its space and to the basic handling that has to happen. Like I've had horses that come to the farm that aren't new to their owner, but are new to me in a training situation and are new to the farm that we've had like a whole staff lesson in how we are all going to manage this horse with consistency and, you know, making sure that we're all doing it the same. So we're all sending the same message. And this horse is getting the 2 + 2 is always 4 from every human here. And that, like, I was just talking to an owner the other day that we went through that with, and she's like, remember how a year ago we were having safety meetings because Halo was like running away from the humans that were leading her in. And now she's like a Liberty horse queen. She never looks away from the humans ever. And it really does it without anxiety. Like, there's no pressure in it. She's just like, oh, I'm with the humans. We're doing the things that they're asking me to do. Like, it's just the way she is. And that's because we were really consistent and clear in our communication. Every human on this farm. And so, like, every time we get someone here, we try to set up that relationship from the beginning. Those expectations from the horse in its attentiveness to our boundaries and the attentiveness to the conversation that we're having. And also those same boundaries for the human. Like, you don't hurry, you take your time, you observe, you relate in real time with a mindful presence while you're with your horse. Try to set it up on both ends. Everybody's responsible.
Yeah. Do you think that it's common for people to feel a lot of pressure when they have a new horse? I had a friend who, it wasn't a new horse. She took over a lease on a horse that was already like a very well-established junior horse. Everybody knew who this horse was. Right. It had won lots. And she was beforehand was like, oh, I'm so excited. This is so huge. Like, this is amazing. And then the horse, rocks up to the farm and she's like,
oh, crap.
Oh my gosh.
I got
it was
a lot to live up to now.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, obviously it depends on the horse and rider situation. Yeah. But even for me, I got Lila. She was ridden by Tammy Smith and ran advanced.
No big deal.
What? And she did one advance. She didn't do a bunch of advance because she's generous, but not all that athletic.
Right.
You know, but she ran intermediate for years and like just like clocked around, did her job.
Yeah.
And so I get her and I'm like, I better be going intermediate by next year. You know what I mean? Like,
100%.
that level of pressure is right there, especially right when I got her. I felt that. Like I really felt that right away because I felt like there was a lot of very happy external pressure. Like, yeah, you finally got the horse that you can do the things with. Like, it was like people backing me, people like wanting good for me. But at the same time, like, go do, like, you know what I mean? Like without meaning to, for sure. Like, but there was that little,
like, oh, I can't wait to see her at her first show.
Wait to see you guys go do these things.
What are you signing up for?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I felt that for sure. And I had to really try to balance that with the way I knew I would want any one of my students to start a new horse situation. You know, like I had to be like, also, I'm going to do groundwork for a week. You know, and I'm not going to ride her. Also, I'm going to sharpen her up to these very, very basic aids, even though I know she's done this. It's funny, like she came to me with some pretty bad habits. Like she would, I wouldn't say bolt after fences, but she would like tuck her tail and run after fences. And I was like, what is that? And God knows, I have no desire to try to figure out where that came from in her training life. I don't care. It's happening right now. And so how do I want to deal with that? Like I could conjecture for 2 weeks and 2 years and never figure it out, never really know. It may never have happened in her life until, who knows? But how feeling that, like as a trainer, how do I want to now help her do that differently? Because that doesn't feel good to me. I don't like that ride. I had to like kind of fight this internal voice that was saying like, but she's done this. She knows this. She's done, like, you just go. And like the part of me that was like, but this isn't the ride I want. Like, I don't want a horse that's like rushing to the fences and scooting away from them. That's not that doesn't feel good to me. And so without throwing shade on anything she's ever done in her entire life, what do I want to do to make this the ride I want? Mm-hmm. And that meant slow down, figure out how to change her balance and sit her down and get her using her hind end better. And that has its own growing pain. I recently realized, this was a funny epiphany for me, that relaxed is not the same as responsive. I was mistaking in our show jumping, which has been like the biggest hurdle for the two of us as partners. Like I was mistaking her being very relaxed and no longer rushing with being appropriately powered for the work I was asking her to do. She was underpowered and non-responsive. She was relaxed, but not sharp.
But do you think that she had to be relaxed before she could
100%
become responsive again?
100%.
So you were like halfway there.
The pendulum was swinging. Like I went like, whoa, this thing like is all over the place. I got to slow it down and collect it and teach it how to hear me when I say whoa without yanking on her face.
Right.
So now I can just like close my knee and thigh and whisper, ooh, and she goes, which is wonderful. Like that's what I want. But can she also, tuck tail and go when I say it? Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh shoot, I forgot that part. Yeah. So it's a funny, like that's how these things work, like just because she's done XYZ doesn't mean she and I are on the same page doing XYZ. I'm still figuring it out. Like I've only had her for 8 months. I don't even feel like, I feel like I know her so much better than I did when I first got her, but we have not become complete partners yet.
It's very common to see horses change hands very frequently, especially in like some disciplines more than other disciplines. Yeah. There's some disciplines where I think out of necessity, horses, it does maybe require a little bit more of a partnership. It just makes me wonder. It's not a criticism. It just makes me curious to know. We hear the common scenario of like 3 months in, it's like, wow, the horse just isn't working out, which like may be true, but it just makes me wonder if the acceleration in those first 3 months was so fast and the expectation to just seamlessly bend into the program was so high. And like, if it just you had taken that 3 months of work and extended it into 6 months or 8 months or 9 months, maybe it would have looked very different.
Well, and it, like, as you were forming that question, it brought me back around to that thing that I was saying earlier, is like noticing what really brings me joy, right? Mm-hmm. It's not getting the horse to the competition and moving up the levels. It's not. For me, I've recognized that it's like seeing a horse understand something, seeing a horse recognize that we're having a conversation for the first time. And then I'm going like, whoa, the human is talking. What is happening right now? Like, and then like getting something like it's so small, you know, like it doesn't have to be this big thing. And I notice I get more joy out of those moments than I do prepping for the next competition, you know?
Yeah.
And I still get a huge joy out of like a really good cross country run or like a 13.9 on a dressage test.
Well, and that's okay. So that is like the other thing about competing is that when competing is going really well and like you are winning, that pull is so strong. Like that dopamine hits real high.
Yeah, it does.
And you do want to go back for more. I think sometimes like we as riders can get like a little greedy and a little bit like, caught up in that feeling. It's not even though the competitive pull, it's like it's the ego.
Yeah,
that's 100%. What it was. Like,
and
I do think that competitive drive and ego are two different things. Cause like you do have people who are highly competitive and competition is a real driver for them and they don't struggle with an overinflated ego. And then there are people who never win and have an overinflated ego.
Totally. They can be totally separate. They can also meld in difficult ways.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think for me, they haven't always been totally separate. And so I have to watch where they meld. Competitiveness and that drive to compete becomes entangled with ego. It easily has the capacity to do that 100%. But then I find like where I feel the most excitement and joy in my day-to-day life and working with horses is when there is way less ego involved. Like it's when there's no ego involved, you know?
Okay. So that's really interesting because I think that for so many of us, including myself, especially at certain points in my life, that feeling of success that conflated your ego, I was confusing with joy.
Yes.
It actually is that those two things butt up against each other. And that's especially if you don't, I mean, we talk about growth mindset on this podcast a lot, but like when your self-worth is based on the results of what you're doing, that is a dangerous game to play.
100%. I remember talking with you candidly about that in our first podcast, like how that was how I was existing and how I got into a very sticky position with a nice horse because of that. And I had to like pump the brakes hard.
Yeah.
Like hard right, leaving this for a while to really figure that out.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I've had like this summer, now that I have a horse that's like Albert was competitive, but like he wasn't going to stay competitive if we continued to move up. Right. Mm-hmm. And he was very, like, we won a lot, which was really fun. And then we were like, plateau. We're not going to be able to go beyond this point. And then I get Lila and she's like, I stepped her down from what she has done in her past. And so of course she's doing really well. Like, of course she is, you know? And now that we get to know each other and we're doing really well on the flat, like she's doing great. And there's that little part of me that was like, I don't want to travel that road again.
Yeah.
It's a slippery slope. When you've been there before, and like I started to see those little parts of myself come up. It was really fun. This summer I had like an amazing couple of conversations with a meditation mentor of mine from the 3 Doors program that I've been affiliated with forever. I was telling her of that fear that I have, like when I'm out and I'm competing and having this really wonderful time, and like I can feel that other part of me like sneaking in, and like I get scared that I'm going to let that take over my life with horses again. And she was like, but you know what? Like that part of you is how you got where you are. Like she is part of you that you should thank. Like she is part of this drive that you've had and this vision. She's part of the vision that you created for your life. and like, disliking her or being afraid of her or hating her or shutting her out. Like what that feels unnecessary. Like thank her, love her, tell her that you couldn't be where you are without her. And then like, that's enough. You don't need her to continue this journey.
Yeah.
And that was so freeing. Yeah. Like instead of feeling, because I think we do that all the time. We have these things that we don't like about the way we relate to the world. And we like try to shut them down and dislike them and push them away and like hate on them, Yeah. And instead, if we could see them for what they are and like see that they have actually probably helped us at some point, like our lizard brain saying, don't jump that, you're going to die.
You're going way too fast.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can say, thank you. I really appreciate that. Also, I've got it. And so like that kind of became my mantra this summer when I would feel that like frustration or that fear or that thing creeping in. It was just like, thank you. I've got this.
Oh, hello. Do I sound different? That's because I am sitting in the 2024 Sierra Heavy Duty Denali Ultimate truck. This might be my favorite place that I have recorded the podcast so far, both because I can lock my doors so that my sweet, precious toddlers, who I love very much, cannot get to me, but also because this truck is a true experience. This is my first time in a GMC, and I think I am a convert. This truck is everything I need in a truck as someone who uses it to haul horses, haul hay, and drive my family around to family outings and try to, get some experiences in the end of summer, early fall. We've gone to the beach in this truck, we've hauled hay in it, and everything in between. So it's rugged in the way you need a truck to be when you're hauling thousands of pounds of horses or hay, whatever the case may be, but sitting inside it is a luxury experience. The Sierra Heavy Duty pickup truck is known for its raw power under the hood and its towing capabilities. And this truck in particular has the most, yes, I'm using the superlative here, towing capabilities, including 14 camera views. You cannot even understand it until you see it. It also has something called a transparent trailer view. I had never seen this before, but it's insane. Basically, you can kind of see through the trailer using mounted cameras to get a view of what's behind the truck as if the trailer was invisible. Also, the seats have massagers and air conditioning and heat. So literally sitting in this truck is a spa experience. This truck also has Wi-Fi, which I have found incredibly useful for work. So I've recorded a podcast on location in this truck. This would be really useful for vets or professional riders who maybe need to travel around, haul to shows a lot, so that you're never going to be stuck somewhere without Wi-Fi if you need to do billing or client communications, whatever the case may be. This Sierra really ticks all the boxes for me, even using it a variety of ways. Hauling horses, hauling hay, hauling feed, hauling kids, and even going out on a date night, which is rare for us, but it is just the perfect combo of everything you need and everything you want. Utility and luxury. It's rugged, but also a total treat to be in this truck. And once again, this is the 2024 GMC Sierra HD Denali Ultimate. This is the ideal truck for equestrians. Go to gmc.com to learn more. I am here with Laura Conaway of Conaway & Associates Equine Insurance Services, and we're going to be talking about some of those big questions that you have when you're starting to maybe look into the process of insuring your horse. There are a few different types of equine insurances that are available. What are those main types, Laura, and what do I need to know about each one?
The main type is, of course, the full mortality policy, and that policy is our base policy, and it reimburses you the insured value of your horse in the event of death due to any cause, includes theft, and also has provisions for authorized humane destruction. Now, attached to that, you also have the opportunity to purchase a medical coverage, and the medical coverages, they vary from carrier to carrier.
Major medical is something like if my horse was in the field and he got a big gash and the vet had to come out and sew him up and give him medication, that sort of thing, I could then submit that to my insurance for reimbursement.
That is correct. And then major medical also goes into so many other aspects. It has regenerative therapy in the event your horse becomes lame and needs to have some more advanced therapy. It has provisions for diagnostic testing, either for an illness or for a lameness, so for ultrasounds or possibly an MRI. Things of that nature would also be considered under the major medical endorsement.
Sometimes we think of equine insurance as only applicable to really expensive horses or horses that are competing a lot, high value performance horses, but I've learned that that's not always true. Why might I want to insure my younger horse, perhaps, who maybe has not started competing yet, or maybe I'm just getting going training him?
As they're learning to do their jobs and as they're going different places for training, there is an added risk for that. And while their value may not be as high, then the major medical is also a very important aspect, because then you could get reimbursed for the non-routine veterinary expenses associated with any illness or any issue they might have.
Laura, thank you so much for taking the time. For anyone who is interested in getting in touch with Laura and her team, they can go to conaway.net. That's CONNAWAY.net. Or you can give their office a call. That is area code 501-868-8084. And once again, that is Conaway and Associates Equine Insurance Services. So you've decided to you're going in a few days to the Liberty Festival.
Yeah.
So you've been doing all this Liberty work with Lila. This is a really interesting shift. The natural horsemanship stuff has been pretty well integrated into your program for quite a while.
Yeah.
That's something that was introduced to you when you were still doing a lot of competing and all of that sort of thing. So that's built along with the way that you've built your program. But I mostly want to talk about the Liberty work. That's a little bit newer.
Yeah,
for you.
It's been such a fun evolution. Earlier when we were talking about being able to notice those places that spark joy for you and being open to them. Well, I've also been really trying to understand that may change. Just because I'm whoa, this is sparking a lot of joy for me right now, it doesn't mean a year from now I'll be this is still, it might change. And I love the idea of staying open to the new thing that sparks joy. I think that people can do that in a very flighty way and never really sink themselves into something to know if they actually like it. They just jump from thing to thing to thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I also think there's a way to recognize a path that you're whoa, I didn't know that was so cool and that I could be part of it, and to really immerse yourself in it. And then to recognize there's a little branch off of that you're whoa, I want to check that piece out. And then go, whoa, I want to, and that's how I've gotten to where I am, right? That's how I've gotten to this spot with Liberty. Because first it was, I have some tricky horses. I need some better skills. I need new skills in my toolbox to help these horses with the job I'm giving them. And that branched me into a deeper dive into the horsemanship world. Mm-hmm. And then the horsemanship world branched off into the Liberty world. Mm-hmm. And I'm whoa, that's its own cool. And that also, the horsemanship world also branched off into the positive reinforcement world. Mm-hmm. And it turns out the Liberty world and the positive reinforcement world have a lot of entangled branches. It's really neat.
There's a lot of people that kind of straddle both, have a boot in both.
Totally. Because the Liberty world also connects to trick training. And trick training gets done a lot with positive reinforcement, almost exclusively.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's all these little connections between these little pathways that I've been oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So, and I'm the more tools I have, the better, the deeper my tool chest is, the more things I have to offer to people and their horses.
Yeah.
And so some horses come to my bar and I'm this one doesn't need Liberty work. Let's go this route. And then some come and I'm you need Liberty work. And now knowing more about it, I'm I see the applications of it beyond trick training, beyond that looks cool.
What is the benefit for horses in your program of Liberty work? What horses come in and you're like, you need it?
The ones that are so distantly aloof that they don't know a person exists.
They're the ones that
They need liberty.
You're on the phone, you're talking to them, and no one's on the other end.
They're like on the end of a rope, pulling on it, looking the other way. I'm like, well, you know how to go in a circle, but if I let go of this thing, you'd be in Timbuktu. Or the ones that can't stand still in their own skin.
So there's something about the distance.
Yeah. There's no connection there.
And Liberty work specifically builds connection with distance as part of the variable.
Yeah. So to have to be like, Lila, you got to actually like hear me because you don't know what I'm about to ask you. And to watch her kind of struggle through that has been really interesting. It's been helpful for me actually, because I went in, like often we do when we have a new horse that we think has done more than we have. We go in and we're like, but they know. And I have to defer to my horse's vast knowledge. And to be able to say to her, actually, you don't know. This is something that you've never done, or this is a skill set that you have not perfected. Right. And I need you to actually be trained by me has been really good.
And that's something that people will, at some point in their new horse journey, they're going to come up against something, or, maybe they should strive to come up against something that neither the horse nor the rider, it's not in their toolbox. Totally. It's not a multiple choice answer that they already know. Yep. And the other thing that too is that like Lila, she's 14, so she's not a young horse anymore. For her to be at this age, and it's just like how we talk about like neuroplasticity in humans, how it's like really important for us as we age to continue to do things that are new to us and build those neural connections and everything. Don't know the science of that with horses, but for her to essentially learn a different set of problem solving skills. That's also going to make her a much better event horse.
It makes her a better partner. Yeah. Like it has been what has made our partnership in eventing better.
But that's the thing that so many people still struggle with. And some days I still struggle with, even working with you as frequently as I do, like, why does this groundwork matter? Why am I out here chasing my horse around with a horseman's stick? I really want to be jumping that 3-6 oxer that's in the middle of the ring. That is really like what discipline is though, is it's the ability to do something because you know that long-term it's going to get you further than a short-term gain.
Yep. Yeah. You know how many days I come out and I'm like, I do not want to do this. Like there are so many days where I like pull a horse out that's here for training, or even my own horse. And I'm like, okay, it's the day we have to do this thing. When I would really like to go just do this very simple thing that we both know how to do and it's easy, but we're going to do this thing. And it's tedious and it's annoying and it's hard, but we're doing it because I know that it's like the path to the end result. Anything that's being trained, you talk to professional athletes in any. They don't go out and do the fun stuff every day. They grind away at the crap.
That's one of the things you say that a number of times in the starter pack. And I was like, oh my gosh, because I'm not a professional rider, I don't really think about this. Like so much of riding is repetition.
It's so boring. It's so boring.
And it should be
so monotonous. Right. And it needs to be because that's what keeps us safe. That's what makes it so that two different species that speak two different languages can speak one common language during the most important moments of safety, right? Like if we don't grind away at those little things, then 2 + 2 is sometimes 4 and 2 + 2 is sometimes 8. And you hope your horse gets the right answer. Yeah. I don't want to hope. Like I want to know. 2 + 2 is 4. Cool. We got it. Both of us. When I'm jumping Lila bridleless, 2 + 2 has got to equal 4. You know what I'm saying? Like
there is serious consequence if it equals 5.
Right. And so like we're going down to the Liberty Festival. I had Albert for several years and I thought that he was going to be the horse I was taking to the Liberty Festival. And then I got Lila and I was like, well,
you got to learn Liberty, babe.
8 months. And we're going to make sure that you've got some Liberty training and that I can, because Dan James, who invited me to come and present, was like, I'd like you to present on bridleless jumping because it's not something that we see a lot. And I was like, Okay. So
you're like, it might not be something you see ever again.
Yeah, exactly. Like uninvited. And the one person in breeches and tall boots is never invited back to the Liberty Festival. Oh, God.
They were like, we tried that one year and we will not be.
Work. Anyway, so
no, positive.
Positive. So I was like, all right, well, Lila's gonna figure this out. And at first I was like, okay, I gotta like aim for this finished product by the Liberty Festival. And then I was like, you know what? Actually,
right.
This is a work in progress.
Yeah.
And we're gonna go to the festival understanding it's a work in progress. Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk about in our demos of like how you do bridleless jumping work with a horse. This horse that I am riding right now is a work in progress. We're not jumping a 3-6 course bridleless.
Yeah.
We're like cantering, not baby novice jumps. Yeah. Bridleless. And that's where she is. That's fine. That's just where we are. We also have to like, we don't have to. We were invited to perform in like the nighttime show, and do like a routine.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've been prepping that hard for the last few weeks. So that'll be fun.
What are you wearing?
It's good. Oh, it's so good. So Dan was like, I want you guys to like come in like your normal competitors in an English sport. Like, okay. So you're like in show clothes. And I was like, but we're going to just like tweak that a little bit. So I found these like blazer looking they look like show coats, but they are literally sequins from top to bottom, black.
Oh my goodness.
Sequins from top to bottom, like the shiniest things you've ever seen. They're so pretty. And
amazing.
And that one of my students is doing it with me. And so we're going to match. And then our horses, I have a wonderful groom extraordinaire here who finds that horses are her like canvas, like she just wants to do her art. And so our horses are going to be so glittered from head to toe. They are going to be the sparkliest horses.
And Lila is like
bright
white gray. Oh. So she's like the perfect canvas for some. Oh my gosh, that's taking me back to like 6-7-year-old Caroline. Okay. Sparkly toes.
Listen. So this has been okay. So when we're talking about what sparks my joy, when I think about putting glitter all over my horse and running her around a ring bridleless to a crowd of cheering people, I'm like,
you have made it.
So excited.
You have made it. Your childhood dream is achieved.
Legit, right?
That's so cool.
And that right now is bringing me more joy than thinking about moving her up to intermediate. I'm grinning from ear to ear thinking about it. Yeah. In comparison to like thinking about like, okay, well, like when is the next event that I can get to see if I can move up at that one? And does it, I don't know, like, it just isn't bringing me quite as much joy right now.
Yeah. So. And there's nothing that comes out of this that says like you passed or you failed.
No,
like, there's no,
exactly.
It's
and
just
isn't that an interesting revelation.
It's like, it's almost like a show that you go to and your marker of success is how you feel coming away from it, which is really cool.
Yeah. And that's how all horse showing should be, I feel like, but it's not how it is.
Yeah. Or at least that like when we do horse show, we can pay a little bit more attention to, and a lot of like the top riders, you hear them say this. So like they'll win and people will be like, oh my gosh, that must have been amazing. And they were like, actually, it felt absolutely terrible.
Horrible.
And I have so much work to do when I go
couple of events I won at this year with Lila, I was like, that felt terrible.
Yeah.
Like even though she did so well in dressage, the show jump felt terrible. The cross country was great. You know what I mean? But like, it didn't feel like a great win because the show jumping didn't feel good.
Yeah. Like felt like skin of your teeth.
Yeah. Kind of like we got through it. Great. That didn't feel super.
Yeah.
So yeah, like exactly like that. And I feel like if there's other avenues that are surprisingly bringing me as much joy as I thought that doing X, Y, and Z with Lila would, like, why not? Let's go.
That's awesome. So lately we've been ending these podcasts, and this is actually a bonus episode, by the way. Cool. This one's going to be special. We've been ending these podcasts with 3 little things. Mm-hmm. So my question for you is, what are 3 little things that either someone with a new horse should be thinking about or doing, or someone who wants to reset their relationship with their current horse? Maybe they're on the rocks, they're on the outs a little bit, and they want to hit the reset button, hit their factory reset.
Yeah. The biggest thing I think of is slow down. And that's not really little, but it is like the main point. Just like stop being in a hurry. Pause.
Teach him to back up out of your space.
Dude, that's huge.
I'm going to chime in with that one.
Please do. Because that is like.
Because that is one that I really needed.
Yeah. It's so hard. That's the My-horse-itis that creeps in, right? And we're like, but I love them.
And being cognizant of, there are some horses who they are doing that.
Yeah. The touchy, get on top of you.
Getting on top
stuff.
of you out of insecurity.
Totally.
Not because they love you or...
It's never because they love you. Sorry to burst your bubble.
It's something that needs to be addressed.
Yes. It's either because they like think you have the food that they want or that they are insecure and see you as something that can like prop them up or they don't see you at all. Like it's literally never because they love you. That's not, sorry. We all love our horses so much, but that's not it. So yes, one thing that's a big deal for 99% of humans and their horses is like, can you back it up out of your space and have that horse stand several feet away from you? Do that. But I literally do that with every horse I get onto this farm before I do anything else. It has to do that before I do
like that's like the
literally
first thing
anything
that
else.
You do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like go there and stand and just hang out. And until it can do that, I literally don't move on. Mm-hmm. So slow down, be able to back your horse out of your space. And then I would say, pay more attention to your horse's signals. That way in which you're taught to kind of write off certain behaviors as like, well, that's just the way they are.
Yeah.
And
they're always grumpy.
Yeah,
they're always girthy.
Right. And like, it's funny, I have several horses in my program now that make, certain faces and some of them I'm like, we need to look into that. And some of them I'm like, that is a learned behavior and we need to address it differently. And in the moment, like you can never be 110% sure because they can't talk, but you do it enough, you observe enough and you watch enough and you feel your way through enough of them to be able to go, okay, we have checked all of these boxes. This is not something that we can address through other physical means. This is a learned behavior that could have stemmed from something physical, but is now a learned habit, and we're going to cut it off a different way. Mm-hmm. But unless you observe, you can't choose either route. You know what I mean? Unless you slow down enough and then observe enough, you can't make an educated choice in either direction.
And neither one of those options you just mentioned was just ignoring it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. One is like, okay, like make sure this horse feels good and physically and emotionally. And the other one is like address the fact that this is a conditioned response to an event that may have happened in their life before now.
Yeah. Especially if they pin their ears when you're putting the saddle on or you're doing the girth up or they switch their tail or they stomp or they want to run away. Like, I feel like that's the one that people commonly say, like, that is physical.
Totally.
Like, that's physical. And like, some of those behaviors might also be learned, but just listen to it. Don't ignore it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then if you've checked all your boxes, work with a professional to change the behavior. If you can definitely say like, okay, this horse is ulcer-free. The saddle fits. We've done, all of the things that we know we need to do to make sure that
I'm addressing my symmetry in the saddle.
Yes. And my emotional state when I come to the horse.
Yeah.
Right. If all those things are checked, then you say, okay, well, like, how do I help this horse learn a new way of being with this process? Yeah.
But that's the thing where like you have to check your emotional state before you do it, because 100%. Otherwise you're going to come to it with wanting to punish the horse.
Totally.
Or like, you're coming for payback.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Like, you're going to make them pay for it.
It's funny that you say that because my mind went immediately to positive reinforcement. Because I was like, I've trained a lot of horses who have conditioned responses to tack because at some point it was uncomfortable or their body did hurt. I've retrained them to be okay with that process through positive reinforcement, not through punishment. But it's so interesting that you were like, we got to check and make sure we don't just come out. And I don't even go there, but for sure, like, you make that face at me.
No, do not hit your horse in the face.
Yeah.
If you hit your horse in the face, I have news for you.
Your horse isn't the problem.
True.
And that is our spicy little end to this podcast.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, it would be a huge help to us if you would leave us a rating and review so that other riders can find this podcast. We will be releasing episodes of Equestrian Voices twice a month on the second and last Tuesday of every month. So be sure to subscribe so that you get a notification every time we launch a new episode. If you have a topic that you would like to hear, you can email us at info@noelfloyd.com. Or if you want more content, head on over to noelfloyd.com and follow Noel Floyd on social media. See you next time.